Welcome to Neurotypical's Don't Juggle Chainsaws, the podcast that cuts through the rubbish to explore the world of neurodiversity. I'm your host, Nick King.
And I'm your host, Kate Fox, and together we're here to explore, understand, and celebrate being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. From ADHD and autism to dyslexia and other quirky brains, we talk about it all.
And go off on tangents. So, whether you're neurodivergent, love someone who is, or you're just curious about neurodivergent minds, you are in the right place.
Let's get ready to juggle some words and maybe even a few chainsaws, metaphorically, of course. Hello, welcome to Neurotypical's Don't Juggle Chainsaws, two Northern lasses talking neurodiversity. I am one of the Northern lasses. I'm Kate Fox. She is Nick King. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Kate. At least we didn't interrupt each other. It's a start.
No, that's a good start. I thought you were going to launch straight into the theme of, well, could you illustrate to us, Nick, through one of your favourite media, which is that of musical theatre, what the theme of this episode is?
This is where they find out that I love theatre and I can't sing. We're going to do memory. Memory, all alone in the moonlight. Yeah, like that, but not like that. It's probably better than the film.
Yeah, yes, the one with the cats that weren't real cats, but were sort of people dressed as cats. I didn't see that actually, but it sounds compelling. One day, so yes, memory, and I am going to share a quote about memory, from the same author as wrote Memory from Cats and the songs from which Cats the musical is, poems from which Cats the musical is taken and inspired by T.S. Eliot, who I reckon, I mean, he was a poet, to be fair, so enough said. Of course, he wasn't neurotypical. But this particular quote captures something about what to me can be the kind of weirdness of neurodivergent memory. Footfalls echo in the memory, down the passage which we did not take, towards the door we never opened, into the rose garden. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past, what might have been and what has been, point to one end which is always present. Oh, we don't normally begin with some profound poetry, do we?
We normally end there.
Oh,
Well, we can start.
we can start there. Well, we can do, he talks about time looping, so we could end with like two more. Oh, well, that would be so satisfying. This episode will be nominated for the podcast Artie Awards that don't probably exist if we do that. Right, brilliant. And there was a line I held back actually. Oh, I'm so looking forward to the end of the podcast now, but we have to talk about memory in between. And actually, that inability sometimes to live in the present, I think, both impacts on how my memory works and is impacted by how my memory works, I would say. So for me, I almost want to say autistic memory and ADHD memory feel like quite different things. So the ADHD part of me is living in a perpetual present and sometimes believes that this moment is all there is and will go on forever, which means if it is a bad moment, then I can take this moment quite badly. So I'm like, there's only now. There's an eternal now. I can envisage the future and I don't want to plan for it because, executive functioning. But then autistic memory is like, there are so many layers in this room, in this place, in this house, in my fingernails, in my brain, in the words, and all the layers are moving together and blending. And then there's something less poetic, which is half the time I can't remember anything. So that as well.
I mean, there are lots of different types of memory.
Yes, there are.
I'm not sure that captured them, but psychologically speaking, in theory, there are more. I mean, there are. There's probably more than I can reel off the top of my head as well. Because obviously you've got long-term memory for those who've watched Inside Out, where they go and put the little balls from the brain down to long term. But then also then there's the other memory that you just sort of forget the things in long-term memory because they stop being useful or they stop being needed. And then you have your working memory, which is the things that you store in your head for the immediate need. And like what you need, like we need to remember what time we started the podcast to finish it. That's like an immediate working memory, but I won't need to remember that tomorrow because after half an hour's done, I won't need to remember what time we finished the podcast, so it will leave my brain. And then you've got things like your sensory memory, where you remember senses and olfactory memory as well. So like you will remember smells, and that is, from birth, you know the smell of your mother. And then I don't know, short-term memory, which is short but not that short. Um, yeah, all sorts.
And gosh, I was going to say, oh, and sort of nervous system memory or trauma memory, the sort of memory that we're becoming more aware of in books like The Body Keeps the Score, where
Yeah.
some things are held, be it in the cells, the tissues, the
Hmm.
ancestral memory as well. Flipping heck, there's loads of types of memory. How can we possibly talk about them all? But suffice to say, as with so many things, us neurodivergent folk might go about memory a bit differently, and we'll be doing different things across different types of memory, and it won't be the same as our fellow neurodivergent person sat next to us. But so basically, for an ordinary question, um, Nick, how if someone were to say to you,
How good's my memory?
yeah, how's your memory? I mean, obviously the autistic answer is, well, which type of memory do you mean? But
Yes, exactly. Let's get into the specifics. Hmm, for a new for a neurodivergent person, not bad. There are some things. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's more how I do coping strategies around it though. So I have this Google diary that, some people look at and cry. And that means that I don't need to remember things. I don't need to store things in my head. But that is partially because I've got a lot to store in my head. Like there are a lot of things to remember. I mean, one like we had as a household the other week had 8 hospital appointments in one week, like before Thursday. Like that's a ridiculous amount of stuff to keep track of. Um, I don't lose things a lot. My short term's kind of all right. If I've put something down somewhere, that's kind of fine. Um, Longer term, it depends what it is. I do a lot of taking photos of things for prompts. So like
mm,
I know like I might remember something's happened, but sometimes you need the additional details of like date, time, when, where. And I do a lot of recording that stuff because I can have a general idea of something, but often I will also want the specifics behind it that I won't necessarily remember. So I do a lot of like taking photos of things, sending myself emails, voice notes, just so that additional information gets stored, not in my head.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So you're using really tools
Hmm.
to enhance your memory, additional memory tools.
Yeah. But no, generally, particularly for a neurodivergent person, quite good. But there are parts of it where if I don't have the backing of another tool, I'm really bad with people's names. But if I have their photo next to their name, I will remember their name forever. But if I've never seen their face and their name physically together at the same time, almost no chance.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so the visual helps tie them together. And I know it is far more common among people to not remember names. I perversely, because I struggle to recognize people's faces or to remember people's faces, that is a type of memory, isn't it? Prosopagnosia. I'm more likely to remember a name, but then takes work to attach it to a face. Actually, prosopagnosia is a memory issue, as in, it's as if it takes quite a long time for me to reliably piece a person together
Mm,
enough to reliably
remember them.
remember them. And actually, we've talked about Gestalt processing, that type of processing where a lot of neurodivergent people not solely, will process things in wholes. It's
Mm.
like I meet a significant new person. If maybe if they're emotionally significant, I can only remember bits of them, and it takes a long time to make the gestalt. A person is a very complex thing to remember, to be honest. Anyway,
And that sort of that so there's perspective memory, which is often about remembering how to like do a series of things. So like if you I don't know, brushing your teeth. I don't know why brushing your teeth is an example that lives in my head, but never mind. That you need the toothpaste, you need a certain amount of toothpaste onto the brush, you need to brush for 2 minutes. That's a process, and a lot of people struggle with a process memory. Some people will think of that as a whole task, whereas some of us will think of it as task one is getting the toothbrush out of the holder, task two is getting the toothpaste out of the holder, task three is screwing the lid off, four is putting the toothpaste onto the brush. Whereas some people remember a task as brushing your teeth, we might remember that as like five or six tasks that is ultimately the same thing, but we won't remember it as a whole task or a whole memory of how to do something. We will remember as seven different tasks.
oh, that's interesting. And so could it sound right that so there are certain things that I struggle how to learn,
Mm.
and oh, it's like the other when the sorry, it's just being struck by the feelings. The physiotherapist, right, insisting on teaching me how to do certain shoulder exercises with a resistance band, but he was showing me from his point of view, so he was facing me. And then he wanted to see me do it. And I really wanted to say, I can't, this is not going to work. And if you show any edge of irritation, Mr. Physio Hurty Shoulder Man, it will make it doubly not work. And you can show me again next week, but it still will not work because however my memory works, it is not like this.
Mm.
What was happening there? So was that something about me trying to see? Maybe I saw a hole, but I could not break it down into the bits. Also, there was left and right involved, which was upsetting.
I was just about to say there was a mirror element there, there was a cross-body element there, there was an observing element there, whereas you might be a kinesthetic learner where you just have to do it, and you can't be shown how to do it. Because it's not simple brains. It's not a simple thing.
No, and I didn't have recourse to this when I was a child learning things. A little bit of me, but I didn't wanted to say I have a PhD. I'm fairly bright. Call me doctor. Uh, Also, I am never going to pick this up in this way, and it actually felt quite punitive and a little bit. Oh, it was horrible. In fact, oh yeah, sort of. Weirdly, I don't go to the physio anymore, and didn't do the exercises. Go to the nice acupuncturist man who is never going to ask me to remember anything ever. Yeah. Oh, so
And
there's
there's probably several different podcasts and people asking you to do things in their one method that they have decided that they need to explain it in or for you to access it in, and you just kind of turn around and go, no. But then they don't seem to have the flexibility, ironically, because we're a bunch of rigidly diagnosed people, to offer another way to do something.
exactly. Be like, oh, blah blah blah. I'm showing you this way, but of course you may learn differently because, like, humans learn things differently. So find your own way. Yeah, of course. ADHD and memory feels so acute. So many people will talk about they forget things routinely, and then people in their life think that they have forgotten the thing because they don't care about the thing. And it's not, it's just their brain, it's not holding the thing, and it might not hold the same thing multiple times to a point where people around them are going, surely you remember now. No, like literally, no, no, no.
There's a lot of issues around object permanence in my house. So, like, if it's not out and it's not seen and it's not roughly where it should be, or potentially it was on averagely left, it just disappears. Like, it might as well just be in the ether, um, because there is a lot of if I can't see it, it doesn't exist in our house.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. How are you with remembering things like books or films or TV programs that you've watched?
I could probably sing you the majority of like, large musicals front to back. Now, nobody wants that. Um, but yeah, I am particularly good at a lyric. I'm also particularly good at poems, for similar reasons to like song. I was also particularly good at remembering Shakespeare, again, similar reasons and a rhyme scheme. Um, Written words, particularly the more formal they become, is if you're lucky leaving my head before I get to the end of the paragraph. So I very much have to like make notes. Luckily all research papers have summaries, but like yeah, it depends what it is. But anything that's got sort of like a rhyme scheme to it or a tune to it can stay forever.
Oh, that's really interesting because, so of course, part of my job as a stand-up poet is I will memorize poems. I find that I have to make a bit of effort to do that, probably a bit more effort as I get older. But I love that the poem then lives in my body, and it sounds like the poems and songs are kind of living with you. But lyrics, no, somehow because I can hear the music, but not the lyrics. And some of my favorite songs, I still don't really know the lyrics properly, as I somehow hear and feel the music more.
Yes, I know a lot of people who, and this is another thing because somebody in my life really likes like humming, singing, but not singing, but like doing the musical element of it, and it'll take me significantly longer to process what, music they are trying to communicate. Particularly, again, then if they're just like clicking or tapping it in some way, that takes even longer on top of that. Um, so it's not the music element that stays in me.
Mm.
It's a word thing. But yeah.
Hello, lovely listener. Are you enjoying the podcast? If you would like to support us, you can leave a tip via the PayPal link on our website at www.neurotypicalsdon'tjugglechainsaws.co.uk. And every little bit will help us keep the show going, and we will truly appreciate it.
I love when there are opposites or mirrors in neurodivergent brains because it feels like you can acutely see there's some bit of the brain that is impacted, but in an opposite way, and it's the same bit of the brain. I have a thing where I'm an avid reader. I read lots and lots and lots, but if you were to ask me what specifically had happened in a book or a plot, I would. And actually, same for watching telly or a film. I can't tell you. What I remember is the feel of it, the emotional tone of it, and whether I liked it, but I cannot easily, yeah, give you a sequential breakdown. So again, am I remembering wholes, a gestalt of something, and not the bits?
What are you
Maybe
doing? Feels not reals.
feels not.
Feels
Oh,
not real.
is this is this a podcast game that we're going to play every podcast from now
Feels
on?
not reals. Oh, we absolutely
Yeah.
do.
Um,
Okay, next live show. Feels not reals. Yeah, let's do
I
that.
also have a very strong food memory.
Right.
And so I'm far more likely to remember what I ate somewhere than anything else. And there was a recent example of this that I suppose was a little bit shameful, but I don't feel ashamed. It was fine. I thought it was funny, really. So, in summary, I was on a Zoom call. It was the Weird Pride Day Zoom call, actually, that Fergus Murray was hosting when I was one of the guests. And then after the official bit had ended, there were sort of some of the Zoom audience who then kind of came on and we were just having a general chat. And somebody who popped up, lovely woman called Sue, and I was thinking, she seems a bit familiar when she started talking. And she said to me, oh, do you remember when we were at Dinah's house? We met then. So Dinah Murray is Fergus's mum, a brilliant autistic activist and thinker, originator of monotropic theory, sadly died in 2021. Now, you would think that the first memories I would be accessing there were, yes, oh, yes, Sue, it was very poignant how we were there as Dinah was having her last days and we were in that place. But the first really strong memory was, oh, Sue, you made that lovely lentil soup. You did. It was lovely. It was really nice. luckily she was pleased I remembered the lentil soup. But I think it would be fair to say that the lentil soup was not necessarily the most striking element of that day. Although apparently it was the only bit that my memory held on to, really.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
I'm
still,
sure you've
like,
got a letter about that somewhere.
people like to be appreciated for their food and culinary,
And
at
the
all.
ability to make a good lentil soup is important.
It
Can
is.
you do that? Can you remember recipes?
No, of course
No,
not.
neither can I. It's
Also,
one of
it's
the reasons I don't like baking because it has to be precise.
exactly. Oh yeah. No, I can't. If it's something you just no, exactly. And also, cooking is steps of things, isn't it? No, there is
There is nothing we like about that.
no. And I could make chocolate buns 1,000 times, and I don't think I would actually remember how to make chocolate buns. I would have to look up how to make the chocolate buns. Oh no, I suppose 1,000 times. Like that would be every day for 2 days.
That suggests that you've done it 1,000 times and you have not.
I
We
have
haven't
done
checked.
it about 3 times.
As data goes, we haven't consulted. What about, I don't know, I think there's a bit of a stereotype, isn't there, around particularly ADHD and you not remembering things.
Yeah.
But is it more about how we're perceived to remember things? So like I think I see a lot of like you didn't reply to my text or I replied to it in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now if I replied to now I'm not particularly one for doing this. Not often. Doesn't happen often. I have friends who are significantly more likely to text me I replied in my head. Um but then you have in your head remembered that you've replied until you go and look at the data that you
Mm.
have not, or somebody, and it is normally me, goes, poke.
Yes. And that's the difference between, yeah, remembering well, and it's also about accurately remembering events and whether they indeed took place or in what order they took place, isn't it, as well, really? That's forgetting the bit where you took the action or did not take the action to.
But then it
Yes.
can make other people have feels, and feels not reals, because they can feel like you're not thinking they're important enough to remember.
I know. Yeah, I know. No, and in fact, that's probably one of the greatest interpersonal difficulties, I would have said, for people with an ADHD element, that sense of others feeling forgotten or tasks in their life that are not done because they are forgotten.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know. I just wish there was a lot more. I nowadays, now I'm more sort of neuro aware, I am I hope, completely sympathetic in a radical way to all memory issues that anyone ever has. I would never think, oh, you didn't care about me because you forgot to meet me. Like, I wouldn't think that. I just think, oh, something's going on, or you forgot to reply, or you forgot that. I just wouldn't. I know that it's
Personal.
profoundly not personal. Yeah.
And it's really different across different people as well. And it's often, particularly if you don't know people that well. So like when I made Neurobears Unpacking Understanding, I gathered like 30 neurodivergent adults. Some of them I knew significantly less than others, and there were people well above that number that I approached. And then you don't know if you should go and poke them and be like, have you remembered this email where I have tried to like initiate a communication, or are you just not interested, or are you just so busy that I don't need to be in like your to-do list, which is also completely valid. But when I had so many people, and then it was difficult to know which one to
Mm,
do without it feeling like I was harassing them, because that's not a look. Or that they did just need like a prompt and a reminder, or they'd replied in their heads, or they were actually snowed under with life work or otherwise that like they couldn't deal with me anyway. But not people don't necessarily, particularly if you don't have a close relationship to them, want to write that to you either, because that's a social faux pas. You are not important enough to be on my to-do list. There you
yeah.
go. We should just say that to people.
Exactly. Oh, I'd love to. I think there's something about, so I unconsciously now pretty much, if I know I'm dealing with a neurodivergent person in any capacity, whether I know it, what their actual memory stuff is, I will just tend to prompt more. And an example of that is in the online writing courses that I run. Brackets, look at my website, katefox.co.uk, sign up every Monday night and Thursday afternoon at the moment. One of the things that the participants have appreciated is getting reminders, because I'm not assuming, even though they'd love to do the writing session, I do not assume that even come Monday, the day of the session, that somebody has remembered it's Monday. And as long as we're not bombarding them, I mean, I couldn't personally do this. It's brilliant to have an assistant who could do that quick prompting. I just think, if it's not useful, then that's fine. It's something you can ignore. Do you know what I mean? But I do. And also, if I'm going to meet someone or something like that, maybe there are certain people where I'm a bit more likely to say, just confirming we're meeting today at such and such. It's not assuming incompetence. It's just not assume. It's the other thing. It's not assuming that everyone's memory is always on all the time. It's basically that. And I honestly, I wish. I think that's a very sensible default position in life. I like that quite often, it doesn't always happen, does it? But, like a dentist or a hairdresser or a doctor, or maybe not a doctor actually, but certain people that you have appointments with will send a prompt, won't they? And then that is really helpful. And some won't. And then they'll just be like, oh, well, you didn't come. And you think, oh. I mean, my diary and calendar are quite well organised now, but in past times when I was not really on top of that sort of thing, I could have terrible diary and calendar fails.
And sometimes it does just happen. I can remember missing one of Zed's between Christmas and New Year, and I was just like, sorry, today was not Thursday. Like,
exactly.
in my head, today was not Thursday.
Yes,
And
yes.
that is one of the appointments that I never receive a prompt from. But there are lots of other appointments that we do receive prompts for. And maybe the inconsistency in the prompting is also problematic.
Yeah, maybe, of course. I mean, basically, we can say in a traumagenic culture, many people experience an overwhelm, an overload of information. So actually, anything you can do to just help with giving that information and not necessarily expecting that people are always going to have it in their head, because chances are they got loads of other stuff in their head. That is good. And also, don't take it personally. Honestly, don't take it personally. I mean, I don't think there's ever an instance to take memory stuff personally, ever, ever, ever.
No.
In Dinah Murray, I was very sad that Dinah Murray died. It doesn't impact the fact that
you remembered the lentil soup.
Lovely lentil soup and Dinah's death sort of coexist in my brain. That's just a weird brain quirk. Oh, so I will dedicate this reprise of the T.S. Eliot poem to Dinah, and it's our entry for the Arty podcast, Arty Finishing Awards. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. Footfalls echo in the memory.
Thanks for tuning in to Neurotypical's Don't Juggle Chainsaws. We're so glad you joined us today to explore the fascinating world of neurodivergence with your hosts, me, Nick King.
And me, Kate Fox. If our conversation sparked a thought, a question, or even a smile, don't keep it to yourself. Drop us a line at hello@neurotypicalsdon'tjugglechainsaws.co.uk or visit our website, neurotypicalsdon'tjugglechainsaws.co.uk, to write in. We'd love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform.
Until next time, keep embracing the unique ways you juggle the chainsaws of life.